The room is already loud when it happens. Not with voices, but with anticipation. Cameras hum softly, lenses locked in, red lights glowing like warning signals. Trump leans forward, shoulders squared, words landing fast and hard, each one designed to corner, to dominate, to claim the space before anyone else can. There's no warm-up, no easing in. The pressure arrives fully formed, unapologetic, public. He presses. He repeats himself. He sharpens the edge. This isn't conversation. It's a push, delivered in front of witnesses who know exactly what's at stake. A few heads in the audience tilt. Someone shifts in their seat. The air tightens, as if the room itself is waiting to see who flinches first. Obama doesn't. He sits still, eyes steady, hands calm, posture unchanged. No interruption. No visible reaction. Not even the courtesy of a nod. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's heavy. It stretches just long enough to feel wrong. Long enough for people to glance at one another. Long enough for the cameras to stay fixed, searching his face for movement that never comes. Trump fills the gap with presence alone, but something has shifted. The louder the moment becomes, the quieter Obama appears, and that contrast begins to draw attention away from the words and toward the stillness. This isn't banter. This isn't performance. It's a test of control, of authority, of who owns the room when no one is speaking. Every instinct in the room expects escalation, a rebuttal, a defense, something to break the tension before it becomes unbearable. Instead, the pause deepens, seconds stretch, the kind of silence that forces people to confront themselves, the kind that makes confidence start to feel exposed and aggression start to feel desperate. Even the cameras seem to hesitate, holding the frame, aware that whatever breaks this quiet will define the exchange and decide who truly commands attention when the moment finally turns for everyone. You can feel it in the audience now. The question isn't what Trump will say next. It's whether Obama will say anything at all. The balance of power hangs unresolved, suspended in the space between sound and silence. But this moment didn't come out of nowhere, and what led here made the silence even heavier. This moment carries weight because it isn't accidental. It's the collision of two identities that have been circling each other for years, now forced into the same frame. Trump isn't pressing out of curiosity. He's pressing because this is one of the few rooms where dominance isn't guaranteed, where reputation matters more than volume, and where the audience remembers everything. For Trump, the stakes are personal. His authority thrives on forward motion, on never yielding ground. Pressing Obama here is about asserting hierarchy, about rewriting the narrative in real time. If he controls this exchange, he controls the story that leaves the room. Every word becomes proof. Every pause becomes permission. Losing momentum isn't just a misstep. It's a fracture in the image he depends on. For Obama, the stakes are different but no less severe. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about legacy, dignity, and refusing to be pulled into someone else's tempo. Respond too quickly and it looks reactive. Push back too hard and the moment becomes noise. The challenge isn't what to say, but when to say it, and whether silence itself can hold authority without explanation. Around them, the setting magnifies everything. Cameras aren't passive observers. They're participants, waiting to reward spectacle. The media presence sharpens each second, turning micro-expressions into headlines before the exchange even ends. What happens here won't stay here. It will be clipped, shared, debated, and framed by people who weren't in the room but will feel entitled to decide who won. That's why this confrontation matters more than usual. It isn't just two figures disagreeing. It's two philosophies colliding under lights that favor conflict over clarity. Viewers expect escalation because escalation is familiar. They expect voices to rise, gestures to sharpen, restraint to crack under pressure. Insiders in the room feel it too, though no one says it out loud. Advisors watch body language instead of notes. Journalists stop typing mid-sentence, waiting for a rupture that hasn't arrived. This is the kind of moment reputations pivot on, where confidence can curdle into exposure, and restraint can suddenly look like command. Everyone knows the footage will live longer than the facts, and that perception, once formed, rarely asks permission to change. The silence is already shaping the story, stretching expectations, unsettling assumptions about how power is supposed to perform when challenged. No one here is neutral anymore. Every observer is choosing sides without realizing it, measuring strength not by decibels but by composure, by who appears anchored and who appears to be forcing the moment forward. The longer Obama waits, the more the room leans, sensing that patience itself is beginning to apply pressure. It's subtle, almost invisible, but the energy is tilting, and those paying attention can feel the center of gravity shifting away from noise and toward something colder, steadier, and far harder to interrupt as seconds stretch and expectations recalibrate in real time. But something about this setup feels off. The more Trump leans in, the more the balance seems to shift in unexpected ways. Control starts to look less like command and more like strain. The room senses it before it understands it. The tension isn't building toward an explosion yet. It's tightening, compressing, waiting for a spark that hasn't come. And once the momentum started, Trump didn't slow down, he doubled it. Trump takes the floor the way a storm takes a coastline, fast and without asking. He doesn't wait for permission or acknowledgement. He moves straight through the silence, claiming it as his own, filling it with confident cadence and forceful language meant to settle the question before it can even be asked. Each sentence lands like a declaration, not an invitation. This is how control is supposed to look. He frames his points as challenges, not arguments. Statements sharpened into tests. If you disagree, you're already behind. If you hesitate, you've lost ground. The rhythm is deliberate, practiced, built to keep the pressure constant so no one else has time to breathe, let alone respond. His certainty is visible, worn like armor, reinforced with repetition that sounds like confidence to those who aren't listening closely. The crowd reacts in fragments. Low murmurs ripple outward. A few nervous laughs break and disappear. Cameras click faster, chasing expressions, hunting for the moment something gives. People adjust in their seats, leaning forward, pulled by the energy whether they want to be or not. Attention is currency here, and Trump spends it aggressively, demanding more with every sentence. He feeds off the response. The more eyes turn toward him, the more momentum he gathers. His voice grows louder, his gestures broader, his words stacking on top of each other, leaving no space for interruption. This is familiar terrain. Volume equals dominance. Motion equals control. The performance escalates because escalation has always worked before. But beneath the force, small fractures begin to show. Points repeat with slightly different phrasing. Assertions stretch further than necessary. The cadence quickens, not with clarity, but with urgency. He circles the same ideas, pressing harder as if pressure alone can force resolution. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but impatience slips through the confidence like a hairline crack. The energy in the room shifts again, almost imperceptibly, as people begin to sense that momentum can betray its owner. What once felt like command now demands maintenance. Trump's certainty keeps moving, but it has to keep moving, as if stopping would expose something fragile underneath. His words stack faster, less space between them, fewer pauses to let meaning settle. Each line pushes forward not because it must, but because it can't afford not to. A challenge unanswered should feel victorious, yet the absence across from him refuses to validate it. Instead of closing the exchange, his dominance stretches it, elongates it, turns it into a test of endurance rather than strength. Observers exchange glances they didn't plan to make. They aren't reacting to what's being said anymore, but to what isn't happening. The silence becomes an unspoken participant, raising the cost of every additional sentence. With every moment Trump continues, the question grows heavier, not lighter. Why keep pushing if control is already secured? Why prove power when power is supposed to speak for itself? The answers don't arrive, and that absence begins to unsettle even those who came expecting spectacle. Momentum is still his, technically, but it's no longer clean. It drags. It strains. And in that strain, the room begins to recognize a dangerous truth. Pressure without response doesn't always break resistance. Sometimes it exposes it, and the cost of continuing quietly keeps rising. The room starts to feel the imbalance. Trump is doing all the work now, carrying the exchange alone, shouldering the weight of every second. The attention he commands begins to feel less like authority and more like effort. The louder he becomes, the more the contrast sharpens, because across from him nothing changes. Obama remains still. No interruption. No visible reaction breaks the surface. His silence doesn't retreat. It holds. The longer Trump speaks, the more the stillness draws focus, creating a strange inversion where sound begins to highlight quiet rather than overpower it. The contrast deepens with every word spoken into the void. Some observers notice it before others. Their eyes drift. Their attention splits. Trump is commanding the air, but Obama is commanding the frame. Volume fills the room, but restraint anchors it. The tension isn't releasing. It's redistributing, shifting weight from noise to presence. Trump presses again, leaning forward, voice tightening, as if proximity might close the distance that sound cannot. He doubles down, accelerating the tempo, convinced that intensity will finish what certainty started. The crowd absorbs it, restless now, aware that something uneven is unfolding but unsure where it leads. Because while Trump fills every second with sound, Obama is doing something far more dangerous: nothing. Obama does not move. Not away, not forward, not defensively. His posture stays open, grounded, almost deliberately unremarkable, and that choice begins to dominate the room. In a space trained to reward reaction, his stillness becomes an interruption all its own. He does not interrupt. He does not signal disagreement. His face remains composed, unreadable, free of tension or theatrics. Trump's words hang in the air longer now, unsupported by response, forcing everyone present to actually sit with them. This is where the balance begins to tilt. Silence stops being absence and starts becoming pressure. Without a rebuttal to push against, Trump's statements echo back toward him, heavier, slower, less controlled than before. The room adjusts in small, instinctive ways. Heads turn. Journalists glance up from screens. A few people stop watching Trump altogether and begin watching Obama, searching his stillness for meaning. Attention migrates quietly, without permission. Restraint becomes visible now, not as passivity but as discipline. Obama's silence reframes the exchange, stripping it of theatrics and exposing the effort underneath the volume. Every unbroken second quietly raises the cost of continuing. Trump keeps speaking, but the effect is changing. The words no longer advance the moment. They circle it. What once sounded like command begins to feel like insistence, and insistence always reveals more than it intends. Obama's composure doesn't challenge Trump directly. It doesn't argue, correct, or confront. Instead, it forces a recalibration, compelling everyone present to measure strength differently, to recognize that control doesn't always announce itself. Timing emerges as the unseen weapon. The longer Obama waits, the more gravity collects around his eventual response. Expectation builds not around what he will say, but around the moment he chooses to say it. The audience feels it before they articulate it. When Obama finally speaks, it won't be to match volume or trade blows. It will be to redefine the exchange entirely, and everyone senses that shift approaching. That awareness tightens the room further. Silence thickens. Each second stretches with intent, transforming patience into a form of leverage that no amount of sound can dissolve. People begin to understand that restraint is not the absence of power but its refinement. Obama's stillness is deliberate, controlled, and exact, signaling that he is not reacting because he does not need to. The contrast sharpens with every passing moment. Trump's motion accelerates while Obama remains fixed, turning the exchange into a visual argument about composure versus compulsion, presence versus performance. Observers feel the pull. Their attention drifts despite themselves, drawn toward the quiet figure who refuses to fill space unnecessarily. Silence, in this moment, becomes the loudest signal in the room. Obama's expression never changes, but the meaning around it does. What once looked neutral now feels intentional, almost surgical, as if he is allowing the moment to exhaust itself before intervening. The room begins to anticipate impact rather than sound. Breath is held. Postures stiffen. The expectation is no longer escalation, but incision, something precise enough to end the momentum rather than compete with it. Trump senses resistance but misreads it. To him, silence has always meant opportunity. He interprets the stillness as hesitation, a pause waiting to be broken by force rather than respected as strategy. That miscalculation hangs in the air, unnoticed by him but obvious to others. The quiet has done its work. The room is no longer asking who is louder, but who is in control. Momentum begins to feel precarious. The energy Trump built now requires constant reinforcement, while Obama's position strengthens without effort. The imbalance deepens, invisible yet undeniable. Every additional word spoken into the silence seems to tighten the trap. The room senses that timing, not volume, will decide what happens next, and that realization shifts expectations permanently. Obama remains composed, unhurried, allowing the moment to mature. When he finally chooses to speak, it will not be a reaction. It will be a conclusion. The stillness has become a mirror, reflecting effort back onto the one expending it. What began as pressure now exposes urgency, and urgency rarely survives close inspection. Observers sense the turn approaching without knowing its shape. The silence feels charged now, no longer passive, but poised, as if waiting for a single, deliberate strike. Inside the quiet, perception is being rewritten. Strength begins to look like patience. Authority begins to look like choice. The audience, both in the room and beyond it, feels the shift intuitively, sensing that the rules they expected no longer apply here. This is no longer about trading blows or winning points. It is about who can hold space without flinching, who can wait without weakening, and who understands that silence, used correctly, can corner noise until it reveals its limits. The realization settles slowly, changing how every movement and every word is measured from this point onward forward. Trump leans forward again, convinced intensity will force response. The room tightens, aware that the next move will redefine everything said so far. And then Trump mistook silence for weakness and pushed one step too far. Trump's tone sharpens, the edges no longer polished but pointed. The framing shifts from broad assertions to something closer, more personal, as if proximity itself might force compliance. He leans into the moment, voice tightening, emphasis landing harder on names, on implications, on intent. The pressure that was once theatrical becomes deliberate, targeted, meant to leave no room to stand without responding. The room feels it immediately. Bodies go still.
Konversationsstimme breath.
The air seems to compress as if space itself is being reduced. Cameras don't blink. The cadence accelerates, each sentence arriving before the last has settled. Stacking urgency on top of urgency. This is escalation by design, the belief that intensity can substitute for inevitability. Trump pushes again, closer now, framing the exchange as a challenge that demands acknowledgement. The words are sharper, less patient, less forgiving. What began as dominance edges toward insistence, and insistence always asks more than it gives. The pressure peaks, not with a shout, but with a narrowing, as if the moment is funneling toward a single point where something must give. Then Obama moves. Not much, not dramatically, just enough to be unmistakable. A breath drawn in, measured and calm. A slight shift forward in his seat. The smallest realignment of posture that signals attention without surrender. Subtle, but it lands like a change in lighting, altering how everything else in the room is perceived. That movement does more than interrupt. It recalibrates. The audience registers it instinctively, even if they can't articulate why. Eyes sharpen, back straighten. The silence adjusts around the motion, reorganizing itself. What once felt like absence now feels like preparation. The imbalance becomes visible in that instant. Trump is still in motion, still pressing, still expending energy to hold the floor. Obama, by contrast, is centered, anchored, composed. One side is working to maintain control. The other has not yet begun to exert it. The contrast is no longer philosophical. It's physical. Trump continues, but something has slipped. His momentum no longer flows forward. It meets resistance it didn't anticipate. The words keep coming, but they land differently now, filtered through the awareness that a response is imminent. Each sentence feels like it might be the last before interruption, and that possibility changes how it sounds. The room leans forward collectively, not toward Trump, but toward the space between them. That space grows heavier, charged with expectation. Observers stop reacting to the content and start tracking timing. This is no longer about who is speaking. It's about when someone else will. Obama's stillness returns after the movement, but it is not the same stillness as before. It's active now, deliberate, signaling readiness rather than restraint. The breath he took seems to linger in the room, a marker everyone feels but no one names. Trump senses the shift without fully understanding it. His tone tightens further, words pressing closer together, as if speed might reclaim ground that presence has quietly taken. The escalation reaches its edge here, where more force risks diminishing returns. The room knows it. The audience feels it. Something decisive is approaching. The tension is no longer stretched. It's coiled. Every eye is fixed. Every pause feels intentional. The imbalance is undeniable now, one side straining to push forward, the other waiting with exactness, choosing the moment rather than reacting to it. A few observers exchange glances, sensing the hinge of the moment. Pens hover, thumbs pause, and even the cameras seem to wait, their operators aware that reaction would miss what anticipation reveals. The room feels smaller, quieter, bound by a shared intuition that the next beat will redefine the exchange. The audience holds its breath, aware that whatever follows will not be measured in volume, but in impact, and that control has already begun to change hands in this charged, narrowing instant now. What came next wasn't loud, but it landed harder than anything said before. Obama finally speaks. Not to interrupt, not to overpower, not to perform. He speaks because the moment has reached its limit. His voice is calm, measured, almost conversational, and that is what makes it land. The room freezes, not in surprise, but in recognition. This is the sound everyone was waiting for, even if they did not know it. Obama does not raise his voice, does not sharpen his tone, does not rush. He lets the words arrive exactly where they need to. It is one line, delivered without decoration. No gestures meant for the camera. No attempt to win the room through force. The language is precise, layered in meaning, careful enough to sound almost gentle. That gentleness is what makes it devastating. The line reframes everything that came before it. It does not deny the pressure. It absorbs it. It does not argue with the volume. It renders it unnecessary. In a single breath, the confrontation shifts from noise to meaning. Trump reacts before he can stop himself. It is not dramatic, but it is visible. His posture changes. The certainty that carried him seconds ago falters. Momentum breaks, not loudly, but cleanly. The room registers it instantly. Eyes widen, not in shock, but in clarity. A few heads nod, almost unconsciously. No one speaks. No one needs to. The power shift is unmistakable. It does not announce itself. It settles. The room reorganizes around Obama's presence, drawn toward the source of composure rather than the source of sound. Trump tries to recover. He speaks again, but the rhythm is gone. The words no longer land with the same authority. They feel reactive, smaller, as if responding to a frame that has already closed. Obama does not follow up. He does not pile on. He allows the line to stand alone, complete. That restraint reinforces its authority. The audience feels the difference immediately. This is not victory through humiliation. It is clarity through control. The exchange has been redefined. What mattered was never the volume. It was the ability to choose the moment. Obama's line does not end the confrontation by overpowering it, but by outlasting it. The room exhales. The tension does not disappear, but it transforms. What was once confrontation becomes comprehension. Observers understand they have just witnessed something irreversible. This moment will not be remembered for how loud it was, but for how decisively it shifted control. The defining counter was not an attack. It was a conclusion delivered early. By refusing to match intensity, Obama exposed it. In that instant, the confrontation became something else. It stopped being about who could dominate the room. It became about who could command it without force. The cameras capture the shift, even if they cannot explain it. Frames linger longer on Obama now. The visual story has changed. Trump's momentum never fully returns. He continues, but the spell is broken. The room knows it. Power has moved without a struggle. No one announces it. No one needs to. Obama's composure now defines the space. The confrontation has a new center. And yet, the most significant consequence is still forming. The words spoken here are already leaving the room. What was said will travel faster than intention. Interpretations will multiply. Reactions will follow. The impact is no longer contained. This line will be replayed, dissected, argued over. This meaning will expand beyond the moment. In the room, silence returns, but it feels different now. It is not tension waiting to be broken. It is aftermath. Obama remains still, letting the moment settle. He has said what needed to be said. For those watching closely, the significance is immediate and unsettling. They realize they have just seen power exercised without aggression. That recognition lingers longer than any applause could. It forces a reassessment of what authority actually looks like under pressure. The exchange becomes a quiet lesson no one asked for but everyone receives. Strength in this frame is not the absence of conflict but mastery of it. Some observers feel a flicker of discomfort, unsure why they are moved. The line did not flatter them or attack anyone directly. It simply reorganized the hierarchy in the room. Others feel relief, as if chaos has been denied the ending it wanted. The moment affirms something they sensed but rarely see confirmed. Composure can close an argument without escalating it. Presence can interrupt momentum more effectively than force. That understanding spreads quietly through the audience, changing how they interpret every second that follows. They stop waiting for escalation and start observing control. The confrontation has crossed an invisible threshold. What happens next will be measured against this line, whether anyone acknowledges it or not. Even Trump appears to sense it, pausing in ways he had not before. The room does not reward the pause with noise. It rewards it with attention. That attention now belongs elsewhere. The exchange has been decided without a verdict being announced. What remains is consequence. And consequence, once released, rarely stays local. The line carries with it an afterlife that extends beyond this room. It will be remembered, repeated, and repurposed in arguments yet to come. Its restraint will be misread by some and admired by others. But its effect is already sealed. The confrontation cannot return to what it was before it was spoken. Something has shifted permanently. The room will remember the line. The audience will replay it. Obama remains still, letting the moment settle. He has said what needed to be said. For those watching closely, the significance is immediate and unsettling. They realize they have just seen power exercised without aggression. That recognition lingers longer than any applause could. It forces a reassessment of what authority actually looks like under pressure. The exchange becomes a quiet lesson no one asked for but everyone receives. Strength in this frame is not the absence of conflict but mastery of it. Some observers feel a flicker of discomfort, unsure why they are moved. The line did not flatter them or attack anyone directly. It simply reorganized the hierarchy in the room. Others feel relief, as if chaos has been denied the ending it wanted. The moment affirms something they sensed but rarely see confirmed. Composure can close an argument without escalating it. Presence can interrupt momentum more effectively than force. That understanding spreads quietly through the audience, changing how they interpret every second that follows. They stop waiting for escalation and start observing control. The confrontation has crossed an invisible threshold. What happens next will be measured against this line, whether anyone acknowledges it or not. Even Trump appears to sense it, pausing in ways he had not before. The room does not reward the pause with noise. It rewards it with attention. That attention now belongs elsewhere. The exchange has been decided without a verdict being announced. What remains is consequence. And consequence, once released, rarely stays local. The line carries with it an afterlife that extends beyond this room. It will be remembered, repeated, and repurposed in arguments yet to come. Its restraint will be misread by some and admired by others. But its effect is already sealed. The confrontation cannot return to what it was before it was spoken. Something has shifted permanently. The room will remember the line. The audience will replay it. But the real impact wasn't felt in the room, it exploded beyond it. The moment leaves the room almost immediately, carried by cameras, microphones, and the hum of whispered commentary. By the time Trump exhales, the exchange has already taken on a life of its own. Clips circulate, first within the room, then across social media feeds, each play framing the encounter differently, yet none missing the quiet pivot that had occurred. Headlines begin to form before the dust has even settled. Analysts dissect body language. Commentators replay the line over and over, searching for hidden meaning, nuance, or flaw. Every interpretation carries weight because the moment itself demands it. Insiders begin to reinterpret everything they thought they knew. Trump's earlier dominance, once assumed absolute, starts to look fragile in retrospect. Observers notice cracks that were invisible in real time. The strain beneath confidence, the repetition that had gone unchecked, the subtle faltering that only becomes visible in hindsight. Authority, once measured by motion, is now questioned by presence. Momentum is no longer about force. It is about timing, and timing favors the composed. Across newsrooms, social platforms, and private conversations, the narrative fractures. Clips of Trump pressing forward are juxtaposed with the calm line that ended it. The contrast is stark. Noise against stillness, aggression against precision. The story no longer belongs solely to those in the room. It is now a symbolic battleground. People debate what it says about leadership, influence, and strategy, each clip acting as proof in the court of public perception. Obama's restraint becomes the headline, not because it was silent, but because its effect is undeniable. Analysts highlight the shift, observers note the posture, and the public begins to sense the mechanics of power that are rarely explained but easily understood. What looked like patience is recognized as control. What looked like silence is recognized as command. Even casual viewers feel it. The quiet line that did more than argue. It reoriented the room, the narrative, and the perception of dominance. Trump's gestures and words are replayed, now reframed. The moments intended to assert strength suddenly appear excessive. The crowd's reaction, once a supporting chorus, now reads as uncertainty, hesitation, even vulnerability. Retroactive analysis reshapes the memory of the encounter. Where he once appeared unstoppable, he now looks reactive, forced, struggling to maintain relevance in the shadow of precision. Observers, both professional and casual, notice the human dimension beneath the performance. People comment on the audacity of restraint, the unexpected power of calm, and the rare clarity it delivers in moments of tension. Conversations shift. It is no longer enough to speak loudly or act quickly. Authority is measured in composure, and the contrast between motion and stillness becomes a template for understanding the exchange. The moment has transcended personalities, becoming a reference point, a case study, a metaphor for influence and leadership that will be cited long after the video ends. As coverage spreads, the symbolism becomes unavoidable. The room is now a lens through which the wider world sees the dynamics of power played out. Every observer internalizes the lesson differently, but the line's potency cannot be denied. Analysts write threads, clips go viral, conversations spark in offices, living rooms, and classrooms. Every replay deepens the perception of strategy, patience, and timing, reinforcing the idea that strength is not always loud, and victory is not always immediate. Even the commentary that tries to dismiss it reinforces the impact. Every critique acknowledges that something shifted. Every attempt to downplay the moment only directs attention back to it. Cannot be erased. The momentum of the exchange has already extended. Extended beyond the room, beyond the immediate audience, into public consciousness. What was once a confrontation has become an exemplar, a distilled lesson in tension, timing, and authority. The effect is cumulative. Every replay, every article, every post increases the significance. Trump's dominance now looks contextual rather than absolute. Obama's restraint becomes a benchmark. The encounter itself becomes shorthand for power exercised without spectacle. People begin to see not just what was said, but what was done by saying so little. Observers recognize that moments like this are rare, and when they occur, they ripple far beyond the origin. And as the noise grew louder, the meaning of that one line grew deeper. The confrontation settles into memory not as a debate, not as a clash of personalities, but as a study in power itself. What once seemed like noise, words fired quickly, forcefully, insistently, is now recognized as a test of patience, a misstep exposed by stillness. The room, the audience, the cameras, all bore witness to a shift that had little to do with volume and everything to do with control. Silence, timing, and presence revealed what noise could not. Ego had once dominated the exchange, pushing, pressing, asserting. Composure countered without force, letting the space itself carry authority. One side leaned on momentum, the other leaned on restraint. In the aftermath, the contrast is unmistakable. The lesson isn't about who was louder or faster. It's about who chose the moment to act, and how deliberate restraint can reorder a narrative that aggression alone cannot secure. The distinction is subtle, but it is what transforms the scene from spectacle to instruction. Speed had its place, but it could not win over timing. Momentum could pressure, could strain, could command attention, but it could not define the room when another presence refused to yield. Control, it becomes clear, does not always require volume. Power does not always arrive in bursts. Influence is often the quiet choice made at the precise instant, felt more than heard. This reframing extends beyond politics, beyond personalities. The exchange becomes a universal lesson, a model for understanding conflict, negotiation, and leadership. It is about the invisible mechanics that govern authority. When to step forward, when to pause, when restraint speaks louder than words. Observers do not need to agree with either figure, they only need to recognize the principle at play. In that recognition, the moment acquires permanence. The audience, now guided to clarity, sees the tension for what it was. A measured push against imbalance, an assertion that presence can outweigh performance. The confrontation stops being simply a contest of wills. It becomes an illustration of the broader human dynamic, that mastery often resides not in acting first, but in waiting for the precise moment to act. That clarity of timing is as consequential as the content of speech itself. And that restraint, when applied strategically, has a gravity all its own. The framing changes perception. What once appeared dramatic is now instructive. What once seemed tense is now illustrative. Observers understand that the significance was never about winning loudly. It was about defining a standard of composure, a benchmark for decision-making under pressure, and the subtle authority that emerges when timing eclipses impulse. Which brings us back to the moment everyone remembers, but few truly understood. Trump pressed, words flying fast and sharp, and Obama responded, not with volume, not with urgency, but with a single line that changed everything. That line didn't just answer the moment. It reframed it, turning pressure into clarity, chaos into control. It reminded everyone watching that leadership is measured not by how loudly you speak, but by the precision of your presence, the timing of your choices, and the weight of restraint. Pause for a moment. Think about the spaces in your own life where noise dominates, where momentum threatens to define the outcome. What would happen if, instead of reacting, you held your ground, allowed clarity to arrive, and let timing do the work your force cannot? That is the power that resonated in the room, the power that continues to ripple beyond it. If this moment made you see control in a new way, consider sharing it, reflecting on it, and holding that same patience in the spaces you inhabit. Subscribe, follow, or simply carry forward the quiet weight of presence. It is rarer and more impactful than you might realize. The cameras have left, the headlines have circulated, but the silence lingers. A quiet close, a subtle gravity, mirroring the stillness that first shifted the room, reminding us that the most powerful moves are often the ones that don't make a sound.